November 1944. A German test pilot climbs into the cockpit of a captured American P-51 Mustang, the very aircraft that has been destroying his comrades across Europe. He has one mission: discover why this machine dominates the skies, and if there's still any hope for the Luftwaffe. For 45 minutes, he flies the enemy's greatest weapon, alone behind enemy lines, knowing that a single mistake could kill him. What he finds in that brief flight will confirm Germany's greatest fear. The war in the air is already lost. This is the true story of Hans-Werner Lerche, the man who flew the Mustang that changed everything. By late 1944, the air above Germany no longer belonged to Germany. Every morning, the horizon over Berlin trembled beneath the deep, rhythmic growl of American engines. Silver bombers stretched in endless lines from west to east, escorted by dark specks that darted around them like hawks. The P-51 Mustangs, the Luftwaffe, once the pride of the Reich, was reduced to a shadow of itself. Its pilots were exhausted, its fuel scarce, and its best aircraft often destroyed before they could even take off. What had begun as the dream of air supremacy had become a desperate struggle for survival. At the Rechlin Flight Test Center, hidden in the forests north of Berlin, a few men still worked in silence, studying, repairing, and flying whatever machines reached them, German or otherwise. Their task was not to fight, but to understand. If Germany could no longer dominate the sky, perhaps it could at least learn why. It was in those bitter weeks that an unexpected crate arrived by rail from France. Inside lay the latest mystery from the enemy, an almost intact North American P-51B Mustang. It had made an emergency landing in a field near Saint-Dizier after combat damage. French collaborators had handed it to the Germans, and engineers quickly realized what they had: a chance to examine the aircraft that was crippling their air war. The order from Berlin was urgent: evaluate the machine and determine the source of its superiority. On a fog-covered runway, the mechanics began to work. The white American stars were painted over with black crosses, and the serial number 4324837 was replaced with a new Luftwaffe identity, T9+2K. The aircraft's blue-gray skin still bore traces of combat, but it looked almost new, a machine built for the other side of history. The man chosen to fly it was Hans-Werner Lerche, one of the most respected test pilots in Germany. He was tall, soft-spoken, and methodical. By that year, he had tested more than 100 types of aircraft: German, British, Soviet, and American. To his colleagues, he was the rare pilot who combined daring with restraint. He had survived countless emergencies, engine fires, and dead-stick landings. When others hesitated, Lerche climbed into cockpits no one else dared to approach. When the Mustang was wheeled out of the hangar, Lerche approached it like a surgeon examining a patient. The first thing he noticed was the precision of its surfaces, smooth, streamlined, and perfectly riveted. The Packard-built Merlin engine, a licensed copy of the British Rolls-Royce design, sat beneath the long nose like a coiled animal. Even on the ground, the aircraft radiated power. He climbed up the wing and peered into the cockpit. It was nothing like a Messerschmitt or a Focke-Wulf. The instruments were neatly arranged, the controls balanced and logical. Everything seemed built to make the pilot's life easier rather than harder, as was often the case in German fighters. Later in his notes, Lerche would write, "In this aircraft, the pilot commands the machine. In ours, the machine commands the pilot." Outside, the sound of hammering echoed as mechanics replaced a few damaged panels. The Rechlin hangar smelled of oil and cold metal. Around the Mustang stood engineers with clipboards, sketching details, measuring propeller angles, inspecting the laminar flow wing that allowed such high efficiency. The realization dawned quietly among them. This was not merely an airplane, it was industrial superiority made visible. That night, Lerche sat alone in the briefing room, reading the American flight manual. The paper smelled of dust and sea salt, probably from the transatlantic shipment that had once brought it to Europe. The words were clear and concise, without the arrogance or over-engineering he so often saw in German documentation. It was, in a way, the blueprint of a different world, one where production, logistics, and human ergonomics mattered as much as speed and firepower. Outside, a cold wind swept through the pines. The war was closing in from every direction. Rechlin had already been bombed twice that month. Fuel deliveries came by truck in secret convoys. Every pilot knew the end was near, but no one dared to say it aloud. At dawn, Lerche walked across the frost-covered runway, his boots crunching over the ice. The Mustang stood ready, its black crosses gleaming faintly in the grey light. He ran his hand over the fuselage, feeling the chill of the metal. Soon he would take it into the air, a German pilot flying the enemy's most feared weapon. He didn't know if it would fly like a friend or a foe. He only knew that the truth of the war might be hidden inside that cockpit. As he climbed the ladder and looked over the empty airfield, one thought crossed his mind. Perhaps this machine held the answer to why Germany was losing the skies, and tomorrow he would find out. The following morning, the captured Mustang stood under a pale November sky, its metal skin glinting faintly through the mist. Around it, the technicians of Rechlin moved with a quiet urgency. The black crosses painted over the American stars looked almost symbolic, like scars on a stolen creature that no one fully understood. Hans-Werner Lerche arrived just after dawn. His uniform jacket was zipped up to the neck, his face expressionless. Inside, though, he felt something close to awe. He had flown many aircraft, but never one that carried such an aura of mystery. The Mustang had already become legend among German pilots. They said it could appear from nowhere, fire a few bursts and vanish again, untouchable. A few engineers were still tightening panels and draining the remaining American fuel. Others inspected the Packard-built Merlin engine, muttering in disbelief. One of them, a veteran mechanic named Schulze, shook his head as Lerche approached. "Look at this," he said, tapping the polished cylinder heads. "Perfect tolerances. They build these like pocket watches." Lerche leaned closer. The lines were clean, the assembly flawless. No jagged welds, no rough edges. "They can afford precision," he replied softly. "We can only afford desperation." The Rechlin technicians had worked through the night, studying every part of the aircraft. Its laminar flow wings, thin and smooth, were unlike anything they had seen. The structure reduced drag dramatically, allowing long-range speed and stability. The cockpit layout was simple but elegant. Throttle, trim, propeller controls, all within the pilot's reach. Even the seat position offered better visibility. Every detail whispered the same thing. This machine was built for the human inside it. As Lerche examined the fuselage, he noticed bullet scars sealed with thin aluminum patches. The plane had clearly seen combat. On one panel, an American crewman had scrawled something in chalk, partially erased by rain. It looked like a name. Eileen. Lerche paused, tracing the letters with his glove. Whoever had flown this aircraft might still be alive, fighting somewhere over the Ardennes. The thought lingered. Now, he would sit where that man once sat, behind the same controls. The atmosphere in Rechlin was changing. Every test flight had become a gamble. Allied bombers passed overhead almost daily. The center's once proud hangars now bore holes from near misses. The airmen there knew that the Reich's end was approaching, yet they continued their work out of habit or pride, perhaps both. Before noon, the Mustang was rolled to the runway for engine testing. The air vibrated with expectation. Lerche climbed onto the wing and into the cockpit. The seat felt strange, more comfortable than any German aircraft he'd known. The throttle lever was firm but smooth, the pedals light. The visibility through the bubble canopy was extraordinary. He could see the entire field and the woods beyond. He pressed the starter. The Merlin engine coughed once, then roared to life with a deep, even tone that made the ground tremble. It wasn't the harsh, metallic growl of a BMW or Daimler-Benz engine. It was a confident hum, balanced and full of promise. The propeller wash sent ripples through the fog as the gauges came alive one by one. Oil pressure, coolant temperature, fuel flow, all steady. The Germans standing outside exchanged uneasy glances. Some smiled despite themselves. One shouted over the noise, "Listen to that! You could fly to London and back on that sound alone!" Lerche ran the throttle forward gently, feeling the airframe strain against the brakes. The response was immediate, almost intuitive. Everything worked, as if the aircraft anticipated his touch. He noted the stability of the idle, the lack of vibration, the precision of the controls. This wasn't brute engineering, it was craftsmanship guided by logic. After shutting down the engine, he climbed out and walked toward the hangar. The silence afterward felt almost sacred. He knew already what his first notes would say. This aircraft is perfectly balanced. Control harmony and pilot comfort beyond expectation. That evening he dictated his observations for the official report. His voice, calm and precise, carried through the dim office. The Mustang's laminar wings and efficient radiator design produce exceptional performance in both climb and cruise. Its range exceeds anything the Luftwaffe currently operates. The Americans have succeeded not through genius, but through consistency, thousands of hands building one perfect design. The clerk paused, looking up. "You think we can copy it?" Lerche smiled faintly. "Even if we could, there's no fuel left to fly it." When he returned to his quarters, he placed the American flight manual on his desk again. Under the lamplight, he reread a section about high-altitude operations. The simple clarity of the writing impressed him more than he wished to admit. It was as if the enemy not only flew differently, they thought differently. Outside, distant flashes lit the horizon, the reflection of bombing raids to the west. He stood by the window for a long moment, the manual still in his hands, and realized something he had never dared to put into words. The war had become a battle not of courage, but of design, discipline, and industry. Tomorrow, he would fly the Mustang for the first time, and though no one said it aloud, everyone at Rechlin knew. This flight would reveal more than the secrets of a machine. It might expose the truth about the war itself. The morning of the flight arrived grey and windless, the kind of stillness that made every sound echo across the flat expanse of Rechlin's test field. Frost clung to the grass. Mechanics in heavy coats moved slowly around the captured Mustang, their breath forming white clouds. The black crosses painted over the American stars looked stark and unfamiliar, as if two nations' identities fought for space on the same skin. Hans-Werner Lerche stood a few meters away, helmet under his arm, eyes fixed on the aircraft that now bore the Luftwaffe code T9+QK. He had flown many strange machines, enemy prototypes, bombers and fighters, but never had he felt this particular tension. This time, he was not testing a German design or even an experimental jet. He was about to fly the very machine that had all but destroyed the Luftwaffe in the skies above Europe. Before takeoff, he went through his routine, a calm, silent inspection from nose to tail. He ran his hand along the propeller, checked the flaps, and stepped back to gauge the wing shape. The laminar flow design still fascinated him. Even standing still, the Mustang looked fast. When the mechanics completed their checks, Lerche climbed the ladder and lowered himself into the cockpit. The seat felt snug but comfortable. The canopy offered visibility almost to the horizon. He could see the treetops surrounding the airfield, rare in German fighters, where the frames always obstructed part of the view. He adjusted the harness, switched on the battery, and engaged the fuel pump. The Merlin engine started with a deep rumble, then settled into a smooth purr. The vibration through the fuselage was light, almost reassuring. He watched the gauges come alive, oil pressure steady, coolant temperature rising, magnetos balanced. Through his headset, the ground officer's voice crackled. "Ready when you are, Herr Lerche." He pushed the throttle slightly forward. The propeller blurred into motion, and the Mustang began to creep along the icy tarmac. As he lined up on the runway, he felt the surreal weight of the moment. A German pilot, flying America's finest creation, surrounded by the remnants of a collapsing empire. At 1,500 RPM, he released the brakes. The aircraft surged forward, the engine's growl growing deeper and steadier. The acceleration was smooth, without the uneven pull he often fought in German planes. Within seconds, the Mustang lifted from the ground effortlessly. The climb felt more like rising than struggling. Lerche eased the stick, retracting the landing gear, and the airfield shrank below him. The landscape opened in every direction, frozen lakes, skeletal forests, and the faint line of the Elbe River. Above 1,000 meters, the air grew clear and cold. The engine sang, a sound so perfectly tuned that he could feel it in his chest. He began the tests methodically, gentle turns, then steeper ones. The controls responded with precision, almost anticipating his touch. There was no vibration, no heavy stick forces. He increased speed, the altimeter needle climbed. At 600 kilometers per hour, the Mustang still felt solid, even graceful. German aircraft at those speeds often trembled, their controls stiffening dangerously. This one remained composed. He spoke into the recorder clipped to his jacket. Handling exceptional, lateral stability beyond expectation, elevator control light even at high speed. His voice was calm, professional, but beneath it he felt awe. Next, he tested a dive. Pushing the nose down gently, the aircraft descended fast. The air screamed against the canopy, but the Mustang stayed obedient. At 700 kilometers per hour, there was still control authority. He leveled out smoothly, the wings slicing through the cold air like knives. When he leveled off, he tried low-speed handling. He brought the throttle back, trimmed the aircraft for a slower cruise. Even near stall speed, it remained predictable. No sudden drop of a wing, no violent buffet. It behaves like a teacher, he thought, not a beast. He flew north toward the coastline before turning back. The flight lasted only about 40 minutes, but in those minutes, he understood more about the enemy's success than months of reports ever had. The Mustang wasn't just fast, it was forgiving. It allowed ordinary pilots to perform extraordinary missions. That was its real power. As he approached Rechlin again, the fog had thickened. He throttled back and lowered the flaps. The aircraft descended steadily, almost as if landing itself. The wheels kissed the runway softly. No bounce, no drift. It was the smoothest landing he had made in weeks. When the engine shut down, the silence was heavy. Ground crew hurried over, cheering faintly, half in admiration, half in disbelief. Lerche removed his goggles, his breath visible in the cold air. For a moment he said nothing, then quietly he murmured, "So this is what we're fighting against." Later in his notes, he would summarize the flight with precision. This aircraft demonstrates remarkable harmony between speed, endurance, and pilot comfort. The aerodynamic design and engine efficiency cannot be matched by current German production. It represents a complete system, not a single innovation. He handed the report to his superior that evening. The man read silently, then looked up. "And your personal impression?" Lerche hesitated. "It's the future," he said simply. "And it doesn't belong to us." The next morning, Rechlin's airfield was shrouded in fog, and the sound of Allied bombers could be heard faintly in the distance. The world seemed smaller now, compressed by defeat and inevitability. Inside one of the cold concrete offices, Hans-Werner Lerche sat hunched over his desk, his notes from the flight spread out before him. The air smelled of oil, dust, and damp paper. Outside, the captured P-51B Mustang rested silently under guard, its black crosses glistening with dew. He began writing his official evaluation. His hand was steady, but his mind was uneasy. The flight had been flawless, too flawless. Every maneuver, every throttle adjustment, every climb, it had felt effortless. The aircraft behaved like an extension of his body. The more he wrote, the clearer it became that the Mustang represented not just superior design, but an entirely different philosophy of war. His report opened with technical precision. The North American P-51B displays exceptional aerodynamic stability at all speeds. The laminar flow wing design is highly effective. Engine performance at altitude surpasses expectations. The aircraft retains full control authority beyond 700 km/h, and stall characteristics are mild. He paused before continuing. The Mustang's operational range of approximately 2,000 kilometers with external tanks enables deep penetration escort missions. Its endurance and speed render it superior to current German fighters in all respects. The words were factual, but in their simplicity lay a quiet verdict. Germany had lost the technological war. That afternoon, he presented his findings to his superior, Oberst Siegfried Knemeyer, a respected engineer and test pilot himself. The two men stood beside a small heater in the drafty office as Lerche handed over the report. Knemeyer read silently, his brow furrowing. Outside, the fog thickened, turning the windows into pale grey mirrors. "This is thorough," Knemeyer said at last. "But you realize what it means?" Lerche nodded. "Yes, it means there's nothing left to match it." Knemeyer sighed, closing the folder. "We'll pass it to the ministry. They'll ignore it, of course. Too busy dreaming about the jets." He was right. Berlin was obsessed with the new Messerschmitt Me 262, the first operational jet fighter, a machine that might, in theory, turn the tide. But fuel shortages, Allied bombings, and political interference crippled production. The Mustang, meanwhile, was already swarming across the skies, escorting bombers over Berlin daily. In the days that followed, Lerche's report circulated quietly among the engineers of Rechlin. A few read it in disbelief, others with resignation. One young officer remarked, "We can't lose to this. It's just an airplane." Lerche looked at him for a long moment before replying, "No, it's what happens when an entire nation builds airplanes the same way it builds everything else, with purpose and patience." The truth spread through whispers. Pilots at the front had already felt it. The Mustang's endurance meant German interceptors could no longer wait safely near their bases. They were hunted all the way home. The Luftwaffe's veteran aces, those who still survived, had begun to vanish one by one. For every aircraft Germany built, the Allies built 20. For every pilot Germany trained, the Allies trained 100. In the hangar, Lerche continued testing captured planes. A P-47 Thunderbolt, a Spitfire Make 9, a Soviet Yak-9. Each time, he compared them to what Germany had left, and each time, the difference grew clearer. Allied machines were practical and reliable. German ones, brilliant but fragile. The Reich was designing miracles when it needed tools. Weeks later, Lerche was summoned to Berlin for a technical debriefing. His report had reached the ministry. In a dim room filled with tired men and cigarette smoke, an officer from the armaments office asked coldly, "If we had the Mustang's engine, could we reproduce it?" Lerche's answer was measured. "We could imitate it, yes, but not produce it. Not at this stage of the war. We lack the materials and the workers are gone." The officer frowned. "Then we will focus on the jet program." Lerche merely nodded. He knew what that meant. Another dream built on hope instead of capacity. When he returned to Rechlin, the Mustang was gone, sent to another base for storage or destroyed in an air raid soon after. Its absence left an odd emptiness in the hangar, as though a ghost had departed. That night, Lerche walked along the runway under the frozen stars, the distant thunder of Allied bombers rolling across the sky. He thought of the machine he had flown, the smooth hum of its Merlin engine, the clear canopy, the sense of effortless control, and realized he had not merely tested an airplane. He had witnessed the embodiment of his enemy's strength, not arrogance or invention, but organization. The report he had written was precise, irrefutable, and tragic. It told a story no one in Berlin wanted to read, a story written not in politics or propaganda, but in engineering and metal. Winter came to Rechlin hard and silent. Snow lay across the airfield like a shroud, softening the outlines of broken hangars and burned-out fuel trucks. The few test pilots who remained moved through the days like ghosts, flying what they could, salvaging what was left. By early 1945, it was clear to everyone the Luftwaffe was dying. Hans-Werner Lerche still flew, though now his missions were fewer. Fuel was scarce, the sky no longer safe. Allied fighters patrolled even the heart of Germany. Each time he looked up, he half expected to see the long silhouette of a Mustang gliding silently overhead. The aircraft he had once flown in secret was now everywhere, escorting bombers to Berlin, Leipzig, and Munich. The sound of its engine, the steady, confident hum of the Merlin, had become the sound of defeat. One morning, a transport truck brought an order from Berlin. The test center was to prepare for evacuation. The staff would destroy sensitive records, burn prototypes, and abandon the base. Lerche read the telegram twice before folding it into his jacket pocket. That afternoon, he walked the length of the main runway, snow crunching under his boots. The wind was sharp, and from somewhere in the distance came the faint echo of artillery. The front was moving closer. He passed the hangar where the captured P-51 Mustang had once stood. Only an empty outline of oil and tire marks remained on the concrete. The aircraft had been shipped south weeks earlier, possibly destroyed in a raid. For a moment, Lerche stood still, remembering the first time he'd seen it. The smooth wings, the perfect balance, the strange sense of quiet power. He wondered if the American pilot who had once flown it had survived the war. In the offices, the engineers packed files into wooden crates. Some laughed bitterly as they worked. Others sat in silence. Lerche gathered his reports, including the one on the Mustang, and sealed them carefully. It felt like sealing a confession, a record of truths too costly to deny. When a junior officer asked what would happen to the documents, Lerche replied, "If history survives, maybe someone will learn from them." As the evacuation began, the Allied bombers returned. The ground shook, glass shattered, and smoke filled the sky. Rechlin burned. The test center that had once been the pride of German aviation was now little more than rubble. Lerche helped load what could be saved onto a truck bound for southern Germany. Before leaving, he turned one last time toward the smoldering field. "So ends our laboratory of dreams," he murmured. By April 1945, Germany was collapsing. Roads were flooded with refugees, convoys of soldiers, and wrecked vehicles. Lerche, still wearing his worn flight jacket, made his way west to surrender to the British. He carried only a small suitcase, a few technical notes, and his logbook. Inside it, an entry dated November 1944. Test flight, P-51 Mustang, T9+EK. Duration, approximately 45 minutes. Aircraft exhibits extraordinary flight harmony. Range, altitude performance, and control stability superior to all known German types. The future of air combat lies here. The British officers who processed him at the airfield near Lüneburg recognized his name. To them, Lerche was not an enemy to punish, but a mind to question. Within weeks, he was assisting Allied engineers, providing technical data on captured German aircraft and sharing his insights into their test programs. When they asked about the Mustang, he spoke without pride or bitterness, only precision. "It was not invincible," he said. "It was simply correct. Everything about it worked together." The Allies built machines that allowed average men to fight well. We built machines that demanded genius, and we ran out of geniuses. In time, the war ended, and Lerche was released. He returned to civilian life quietly, refusing offers to emigrate or work for foreign governments. For years, he spoke little of his wartime experiences. Only decades later did he write his memoirs, describing his test flights with clinical detail. The chapter on the Mustang was brief but haunting. "When I flew it, I understood that the war was already over. Its balance and range were beyond what we could produce. It was not a miracle of engineering, but of organization and reason." By then, the world had changed. The jet age had dawned, and the skies were filled with machines that made even the Mustang seem simple. Yet for Lerche, that 45-minute flight in the cold November sky remained the moment when he glimpsed the inevitable, the future arriving in the shape of a foreign wing. He died in 2000, long after Germany had been rebuilt and the world had forgotten most of the names from Rechlin. But in archives across Europe, his reports survive, among them the one labeled North American P-51B evaluation. The paper has yellowed, the ink faded, but the words still carry the quiet weight of truth. It was not hatred or courage that ended the Luftwaffe. It was math, metal, and method. And Hans-Werner Lerche, for a single winter's flight, had been the man who saw it coming. If you enjoyed this true story and want more historical tales like this one, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next episode. Your support helps bring forgotten stories of courage, technology, and history back to life, one flight at a time.